Welcome, everybody, to the CE Strategy webinar. My name is Kelly Tharp with the Arizona Game and Fish Department, and today we're going to receive two presentations about engaging with educators. We have Heather Hubbard with Colorado Parks and Wildlife and JJ Gladden with Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. And Heather, if you want to go ahead and start and introduce yourself, I'll let you share the screen. Everyone, you can use the chat function if you have questions or wait until the end. We'll open it up. You can unmute and ask questions of each presenter.
Thanks, Kelly. Hello, everyone. It's nice to virtually be with you all. My name is Heather Hubbard, and I'm the statewide education coordinator with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And talking with Kelly, one of the things that we were talking about was really what would be some different things that states are doing. And I offered to share one of the things that we've been working on, which is our teacher externship program with you all. The teacher externship program really came out of as we've been looking at formal education and what our role is in the formal education world. We've really started to focus as a state on how we can support career and technical education with the natural resource pathways. And some of that has really included building up our partnerships with the Colorado Community College System, which is where CTE programming is housed. And then also with the Department of Labor and Employment. A couple of years ago, a bill was passed to increase the number of apprenticeships and opportunities for people to build skills in industry. And one of those pieces was really to support teachers in understanding industry. And so, with these different changes happening in the state, we had approval to start developing two large scale programs. And one of those is our high school work-based learning program, where we're getting high school students into jobs. That way, they can really start to think about careers and what they're hoping to do before they graduate and are making those decisions. And then the second one is this teacher externship program. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, with our teacher externship program, really the idea was how could we think about the engagement with teachers a little bit differently? And when we talk about this idea of the externship, it's almost more like an internship for professionals. So, bringing teachers in, having them work alongside of us to really understand the work that we do in order to help them develop the lessons and the teaching that is standards aligned. So instead of us providing and developing the lesson plans or the units that teachers can then come to us, working with teachers to develop that for themselves, but then also to build our bank with these teacher developed resources. So creating this experiential learning opportunity so that it's real world experience that can be applied. And the focus of our outcomes really was how could we better increase teacher knowledge base and their confidence while developing these resources of the work that we do. One component of that has been our field experiences. We've tried some different ways of doing this, but the one piece that we do find has really been beneficial for our teachers is having them working alongside our staff. So this year in August, this is photographs from this externship. We actually worked with Dr. Adrian Carper. He's over here on the left looking at the camera. Adrian is our new pollinator conservation program manager. Last year, Colorado Parks and Wildlife also picked up the management of invertebrates and rare plant species. And so this is a new kind of section and work that we've been doing. So we really started to work with them of how can we build educational materials and resources in this new program that we haven't really had to focus on. So we worked really closely with Adrian, and we were able to take our teachers out into the field. Not only on state park land. So on the left, we were at Eldorado State Park, and they were looking at how we do pollinator studies to help our parks with looking at noxious weed control and the collecting data then for our state park. But then we also were able to counter that and look at an urban garden and collecting bees where the data then was provided to that garden center as well. So they learned how to actually physically handle the bees, collect them. The top picture of the bee with like his arm up, in case you didn't know, it's really fun. You chill them and then you can handle them safely. But as they start to warm up, they always stick like one leg up in the air and we call it a bee high five. So everyone got to high five a bee. So that was definitely a highlight there. But they really started to understand not only the breadth and the depth of pollinators, the connections to natural resource management, to agriculture, but then started to look at how we could really think through bringing this type of information to students. We've been trying these externships now for 3 years, and each year I've done it differently. It's been really nice just to have time to try things out and play and see what works and doesn't work. In year one, we really just did kind of a 2.5 day in person and did more of like a tour and talked with field staff. We were able to provide a stipend and credit hours for that. Um, the return on that was really low. It didn't really yield what we were hoping to. So in year two, we changed that up. We did 2 days in person, but then continued through the fall semester where we met with teachers once a month virtually. And then worked with them in developing their lessons and units. We also provided a stipend and credit hours during that time as well. That one we saw a little bit more engagement, but one of the things that we did notice is as soon as the summer was over with and we were looking at having them come back every month for these virtual programs, that interest really started to wane and die off because there was just too much on their plates. And so it became difficult for them to continue that long of an externship. So this year, we did a 5 day in-person one during the summer before school started where we actually worked together in developing those lessons. The stipend was less, but we provided a backpack of gear, which we used when we were actually in the field collecting bees so that they knew how to use all of the equipment and then had it available ready to use with their students as they got back into the classroom. What we found is we've played really Model 3 has been the most effective. When we did just the 1 week in person, the timing worked better. They were more engaged. They weren't trying to also teach and do everything else that they were doing during the school year. And one of the biggest kind of perks was that backpack, being able to have all of the tools and resources that they just went back with, really made a difference. So as I've been talking with our teachers, those lessons have been implemented. They've got the gear. One has actually created a partnership with another school and taught them how to do it. And so we were able to provide a backpack of gear for them as well. As we move forward, we have kind of like two major updates or things that we're really now trying to think through. One is how can we better align this type of program with the CTE credentialing for teachers to be certified to teach a natural resource pathway. There's a lot of hours that have to be logged for them, along with degrees to be able to have this type of licensure. And that can be a huge burden for teachers to do. So we're really trying to think about how we can better support our teachers through that credentialing process. The other thing that came out of this cohort 3 was how can we better align and think larger scale, not just our teacher resources, but how do we think about all of the education and outreach and information that's going out about a program? So what we're looking at doing next summer is continuing the externship program with our teachers, but coupling that with what we're calling an internal externship. So as we look at a specific topic or theme or issue that our agency is working on that needs to have social media, education programming, resources developed, that we are coupling our teachers with members from our staff that may be with our customer service representatives, our education coordinators, our public information officer, social media, having them work together going through this experience in the field. And then working together, we can really hone in on what's the messaging, what's the misconceptions, how do we start packaging that, but having teachers support us through that lens as well. And then working with them to develop those lessons that we're able to provide. So I know we have about 10 minutes for me just to kind of share some stuff. And I know that was a really kind of broad view. Um, I don't know if you want to start with questions, Kelly, or hear JJ first, and then we can do more of a discussion kind of style. But I'll throw it back to you after that really fast. Here's what we're trying.
Sure. We can open it up for some questions right now, see if anyone has any. Feel free to just unmute yourself if you have any questions.
Uh, uh, was it hard for you to get your biologists to play along with this for these uh, externships?
I've actually it's been really cool to see. I've had absolutely no issues. They've been amazing partners in this and actually really excited. Last year, we worked with like our aquatic health lab. They brought our teachers out for an entire day and we're teaching them how to do necropsies. And then we're building resources and trying to help with them. They were really excited. Adrian this year was really involved. He had no issues with the planning. He works at CU Boulder. He's also a professor there, and was able to get us access to the entomology labs. And to me, they actually really went above and beyond. And it was, I think, because of that connection and the purpose of what we were trying to do. They really resonated with that. And so far, everyone that we've talked to has been really excited. And I have other staff that is asking me if we can do an externship with them. And so I'm trying to figure out how I say yes and no actually to some people.
Good question. Other questions? We've got one in the chat. Let's see. Is the natural resources credentialing a college credit or a school district requirement?
So CTE programming is a national program that has very specific requirements for teacher licensure to be able to teach that. So it is um, very specifically laid out by Colorado Community College System. It's in a complete mouthful to try to say that really fast. But they show what teachers have to go through, which can include college credit, that they have industry experience, or a number of hours of professional development above and over their teaching license to be able to teach these specific pathways. So that is all determined first by the state and by the CTE National Board, kind of as they look through that credentialing. School district requirements more like what pathways they are chosen to provide within their districts. And so they may have another layer, but as far as credentialing, that's more of a state level.
So the end game for this program, it was an experience, but was there any expectation in the classroom or a follow-up or something like that?
Yeah, great question, Kathy. So this was designed not to be a workshop. So really the idea was to think about this more as um, kind of a win-win of providing experience for them to understand the work that we're doing. But in turn, they were working directly with us to develop lesson plans. Those lesson plans then needed to be tested in their classroom and then feedback given to us of how those lessons went, where those tweaks need to happen. So it was that was really that focus piece of there had to be that end lesson or unit that then became a resource CPW can provide statewide for free to other educators who would want to bring in this type of material into the classroom.
Can I do a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm really curious because I'm a retired teacher and this sounds similar to a fellowship. I had a similar experience, but it was in a lab. And so I guess the question would be, did you work with educators to see where in the curriculum you were trying to target to provide an experience? Because in GSS, you want to give a real world experience, right? You want to have that scenario. I was just wondering how you developed to start. And then is the end game for the teachers to have the lesson or for you to curate lessons then to share out broadly within the state?
So the last question, it was both. The lesson plan was for them, their use in the classroom, also for us to curate and be able to share out. So we had kind of that two-pronged piece to that lesson plan. As far as the start, you're right. It's like a fellowship. Um, Within our state, we are considered a district domain state, which means how those lessons or how those standards are taught are very specific to the district, including their curriculum. One of the things that we're really seeing here in Colorado is because of that piece, and the kind of shift in the focus of our curriculum, our teachers have very strict curriculum that they have to follow, like Open SciEd, which takes up every second of their time. So full-blown lesson plans or units from us are really dwindling. We're not seeing accessing those as much or using those. So the idea was to think about more of how can a teacher take the concepts that they're looking for, these themes that really match to the work that we need our public to understand, and then working with them on that standards alignment. We've done these where it's K-12. So we're not targeting a specific grade level or specific standard. Here's our theme. And then we've worked with them of let's now break down, let's work through these standards alignment. Where do we see connections to that? And when we have districts using some of these larger scale curriculums like Open SciEd, how do we see coupling this into those requirements that they have? So that way, instead of only talking about like tigers on the Serengeti, they're now actually talking about elk populations here in Colorado, and that they're seeing more of that concrete understanding in those lessons and units. So this is one of those pieces where we've been trying to see how can we be more creative and think about lessons and units very differently than we have in the past, because that's not what our teachers are really needing right now. And that's what we're kind of seeing the trend here in Colorado going.
We have one question in the chat, Heather. Were there any challenges in providing teachers with a stipend?
So far, no. I'm lucky I have a budget where I was able to put money specifically aside for this project and program. I've played with different stipends. I think the highest I've done for the longest term one was about $5,000. This year I cut it to 1,500. And I had a repeat person that did them, and I asked him how he felt about that. And the stipend, he was like, it's nice to have it. But really, what got his attention and was more useful was the backpack, and having everything and all the gear, but actually using it in the field with our biologists. So then he knew how to do that with his students. That was way more of the perk than the stipend was. Stipend was nice, but it was really having useful material.
Good to know. Any other questions for Heather? All right. If you think of questions later, we'll still have time at the end. You can ask them. Thank you so much, Heather. JJ, you are on.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. My name is JJ Gladden, and I work for Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. There we go. We're sharing properly now. I am an assistant chief in our education division, and I moved into our education division after 14 years in our fisheries division. So I'm a certified fisheries biologist, and I made a lot of fish in my day. Let's be honest. I worked on our hatchery system and a lot with our fishing derbies and things like that. Why am I starting I'm in the wrong. I didn't start at the start. My goodness, Kelly, what have I done? See, you can tell I'm a biologist and not a teacher. I don't know what I'm doing in here. But I really started getting drawn to, we can produce 1 million fish, but we have to connect people to the why and to the resource if we really want to have impact. And that's how I've moved into the education division and up into a leadership position. So we've got a lot of initiatives going as well. But this one is the topic that we're here for today, but something that took us from just doing a lot of things to doing a lot of things with purpose. we've realized that the only way for us to scale is to work with our teachers and truly be that support, but doing it in the right way and communicating well with our teachers instead of this is what we think you need. All right, this is what we're thinking. How do you feel about it, and how can we best implement it and do it in the correct way? So we started what we call the Teacher Leader Council. We started this last summer. So we did applications in April and May, made our selections, did a kickoff event in July of 2024. We ended up with about 20 applications, selected 12, and we started with 12 and we had commitments. It was every other month we were doing in person, and every other month, the off month, we were doing a virtual offering. We canceled a few of those, kind of like Heather's talking about. There's some fatigue in there as well, but they absolutely loved the in-person activities. And when they weren't able to make it to one, we definitely heard, oh my God, like I can't believe I'm missing X. One of them being this experience in this is Blanchard Springs Caverns here at the bottom, and it was just a fantastic. We actually brought our teacher leader council to our commission meeting. They sat through the committee process. They sat through our our fund commission and passing. All the things. Y'all been to a commission meeting or whatever your version is in your state. But this was the kickoff and announcement of our Caves program. We went on an experience into Blanchard Springs Caverns, and we were getting that feedback, of course, from our teachers. How do we do this for a school? This is in the north part of our state. What is it that we do for our students that are in the Delta? How do we make this be true and impactful, and they understand the why it's important for somebody that can't make it to this place. So we got to have really good conversations. We they love the experiences. Let's just be honest about it. Whether it was caves, you can see a picture of Michael shooting a shotgun. We did trap shooting. YSS is really big in our state. So, all right, let's have a conversation. We got some schools that have 8 teams that compete in youth shooting sports. We have some schools that absolutely don't want this to be a part of their school. Let's have these conversations about why. What are the barriers of this going into a school? How can we, as you would stereotype, we got a lot of country schools that are all about shooting guns. All right, how do we implement this into our cities? So we had really good conversations. Nathan and Jennifer over here just hamming it up. They're actually shredding a possum. That's right. We did a little culinary class, and as you would suspect, they're like, my God, I don't know about eating possum, but they dove in. They're clearly having fun, and they absolutely loved it. But how do we have those conversations about wild game and sourcing, sustainable protein and all of those things? We're not really advocating for a lot of possum cooking classes, but let's do a little bit of shock and awe and see, oh, wow, this is something that I would never have done for myself, but I've been part of the process now, and it really is something unique, and it got a lot of conversations going. Let's be honest. So these are our first cohort. Not all of them are pictured here, but we learned a lot from them, not just the projects that we worked through, but also how do we make it better for year 2? We're always doing those tweaks. So we use them to develop some of our goals. We had goals in mind for year 1, and we would be ridiculous if we did not make some adjustments based on the findings from year 1 to develop, okay, maybe we thought we were going to get this, but this is the direction that makes the most sense at this point. So we absolutely want to do that collaborative work, and we want to connect people to real world jobs and opportunities. We want to provide professional development for our teachers, all of those things. We want to align things with standards. We don't want to put one more thing on an educator's plate. This needs to be a a pull and plug situation instead of, oh, here's something, it's going to be really cool, but it's just on top of your existing workload. So those were the things that we had conversations about, both in our field experiences and in our virtual meetings. We brought in true professionals, both our biologists, who this is Jason Miller. He's one of our fisheries biologists, or he's an assistant chief at this point, but he's talking about everything from the importance of vegetation in waterways and how we actually can restore some of our large core reservoirs and get that vegetation, that healthy vegetation back in there, not our nuisance vegetation. And on the left, this is a member of Trout Unlimited talking about macroinvertebrates, and you can see those fly rods in their hands. It wasn't just we're going to talk about macros and the importance of being indicator species, but what's on the end of that fly rod? Yeah, you're mimicking the things that these animals, that these trout eat. So we're trying to connect things in a different way, just like we would try to do for a student, and getting feedback on the best way to implement that. I've got our criteria of what we're looking for. Basically, we're asking them to come in and say, yes, I can be there for these in-person and virtual experiences. We want them to be full-time educators. We definitely want to point out, and we've been purposeful in trying to build someone in from public, private, and charter so that we're not just speaking to one group, because we're having an increase in these charter schools and private schools. So we don't want to miss out on speaking to those students as well. And as you would suspect, just like our students want, these teachers want to be out in the environment. They do not want to be in a classroom. They want to be experiencing things. They want to be on the water, trying new things. Aisha there on the left with the bow, she was the absolute most fun. She had never shot a bow before in her life. She teaches at a K-8 in Little Rock, our capital city. And when she started hitting targets, we went out on our 3D range after we did some lessons, and she started hitting 3D targets and doing dances. I mean, it was truly amazing to see her just come alive and be like, this is for everybody. This is something that I can do in my school. That's an amazing, that's the big thing about archery. It's very approachable. It's not that you have to have the best athlete in the history of the world to go compete in archery. It's about discipline and practice and all of those things that we speak to in our archery programs. So we did get some work out of them. We got them to sit down in the classroom. Of course, we're building some stuff there, but we had some projects. And when you got them into the classroom, we could really hone in on some things. One of the first things we did was an introduction to hunter education. Hunter ed is written at a 5th grade level, and Arkansas was actually a state that passed a mandatory gun safety lesson. So that kind of urged us to get a little bit proactive with this, but it's not just about the gun. It's about the ethics and the safety and all of those things. So we actually wrote, with the work of our Teacher Leader Council and internal staff and IHEA, a K-5 resource. We broke it into K2 and 3-5. We wrote it and we sent them homework, right? We get it all established. Okay, we need to do some alignment on this. Yeah, they did not do a fantastic job on the homework portion of this. So we put them in a classroom and we said, we can't basically go outside and have recess until we get these aligned. So it's amazing how fast they knocked it out, right? And this is something that we trialed through actually our School of Conservation Leadership group that's listed there at the bottom. That was our pilot group. There were 20 schools that were able to utilize that resource, and we get some feedback, not just from this group, but teachers in their classrooms. And now this is an open source. We've housed it on our LMS that is through IHEA. And I know I'm just saying a lot of letters at this point, but that's something, that's a shared resource that anybody can utilize in their K-5 schools in their state. It's not unique to Arkansas in any way. Um, Now, again, they try to escape the classroom at all times, right? But that is really where the best learning happens. And we finally decided we're just going to embrace it and let them go out and play and be on the water. So we can still have these same conversations, even if we're in a bunch of flat bottom boats in the Delta, uh, going around looking at birds, cypress trees, doing a little bit of fishing, things like that. So they helped us with our introduction to hunter education. They were also extremely instrumental in a couple of other initiatives that we're trying to get off the ground, that I won't spend a lot of time on. But again, we've got this group and we've got a new concept that we're trying to launch. We've got to utilize them to get the ground truthing of that. So we've got Generation Conservation, which is actually in 3 weeks. Again, open to public, private, charter, even homeschool students. But this is basically a science fair, an East competition meets an FFA competition meets a trade show. And we're trying to just expose students to as many parts of being in a conservation agency and what conservation is and that it is for everyone that we can. I'll be reporting out on that in the future. Let's get through the event first before we take a deep dive in that. But of course, they're going to be providing panel discussions at this event because there are over 100 schools that are signed up to come to this. So they don't need to hear from me. They need to hear from these teachers and the impact that this has had in their schools. Very similarly, we've got a designation program that is a complete ripoff of a STEM model school. We call it the School of Conservation Leadership, and it's basically implementing our school-based programming into their schools in a purposeful way. That's not a addition, it's a pull and plug situation. That's getting a lot of traction. We had 13 schools receive the designation, some of which were our teacher leader council. They were, of course, eligible to apply and go through that process. But the exciting thing is we went from 20 schools applying for that in year one. We just started year two and we had 65 schools apply to be a part of that. So we're really getting a lot of really good traction on these things, and it's going to take the whole village to pull them off. But that's great that we actually started with the Teacher Leader Council to help us make sure that we're doing this in a intelligent and purposeful way. Here's a picture of them doing what they love, and that's experiencing nature, and that's exactly what we want for our students. And doing it in a smart way is what we're going for. So there's 1,000 more things I can say about it, but let's get to y'all's questions.
Thank you, JJ. I'll open it up. You guys can just take yourself off mute or put it in the chat, either way.
And I will say, as we wait on those questions, we did not offer a stipend. That was not allowed to be said. We actually brought our teachers on as extra labor with a cap of $500 for their time. And some of them actually just kind of refused the payment. Like there's some of them that we didn't pay out. They're like, I'm not doing this for the money. We appreciate it, but we want the experiences. We want the equipment, just like Heather spoke to. Those are the things that they wanted. So it was great to know that we had people. We didn't advertise that there was money involved in the first place. We wanted people in the room that were doing it for the right reasons. And I know that money can help, but they just truly wanted to do it to make more impact for their students.
I have one question. For the School of Conservation Leadership, are there certain things to keep that designation that they need to do?
Yeah, it's a 3-year designation. So they continue those mandatory. There's 10 mandatory items, and of course, in year two, it started morphing, and it's like, oh, this is mandatory now because y'all loved it, and it's really getting legs. So we're always pivoting things around and organizing based on our feedback. Hopefully we're not just doing things anecdotally, but yes, they have those steps and those true, we kind of spread them around the state. We've got, of the 13, there are 6 mentor schools. spread throughout the state so that they can be like one of them's a school. I'm up in North Arkansas today. They've been doing this for forever. So yeah, they kind of had a leg up. On the flip side of it, we had a school in Southwest Arkansas that literally had zero of our programming in their school. They went for the designation. Michael's on the teacher leader council. They formed a committee. They did it the right way, and they blew it out of the park. They were amazing. So we're trying to be like, you can start from nothing and be great, or you can already have a lot of connections, but it's just not organized. So we wanted to be able to speak from all perspectives, or as many as we could.
Any lingering questions for Heather or JJ out there? All right, I will turn the recording off.